Welcome to Grieving Insomniacs. I am your host, Christy Haberman. I am glad you're here. Thanks for being a part of our community. A few disclaimers before we get started. I am a licensed therapist. However, this podcast is not to be considered mental health therapy or counseling. It is for entertainment purposes only and is not associated with my counseling practice, Christy Haberman Counseling Services. Thanks for showing up. Welcome to Grieving Insomniacs. This is your host, Christy Haberman. I'm here with Kai the Wonder Dog. I'm a little late getting this podcast recording out this week. I wasn't feeling real well on Sunday. And it's really hard to tell. We're preparing for a winter storm here in South Dakota. It's currently occurring today. And I always get a lot of anxiety during events like these because I have kind of a lengthy drive to go to work. And it's always a crapshoot about whether or not I'll be able to make it into work. So I was stressing about it pretty hard on Sunday, worrying about whether or not I'd be able to get to work. And if I didn't get to work, what would they say? I'm sure those of you that struggle with anxiety understand what I'm talking about. But also what happens with me. And I don't know if it happens with anyone else, but leave me a message if it occurs with you. The closer I get to Christmas, the more I physically shut down. Every year, it takes me by surprise, and I don't know why. There's always this expectation that this year it'll be different. It'll be different this year, right? It'll be different. I'll feel better about losing Chris this year. It won't be so hard this year. I'm really getting tired of saying that, but you don't want to anticipate it that it'll be the worst this year either. So what happens with me is the closer that I get to Christmas, the more I physically shut down. My mental health begins to deteriorate. I start to get, whether I'm emotionally sick or physically sick, for me, it's all the same. I start to get feeling sick more. I'll have a lot of nausea. I will have a lot of just vague symptoms. And I was thinking today, I was like, man, I don't remember the last time I felt good. And it's all I've come to accept as part of my grief journey. So I thought I would talk about that today, about Christmas, and about some of the things I've come to learn and accept about being a grieving person around Christmas time. So I survived Thanksgiving okay. In fact, I was a little surprised. But now I'm wondering if that was just an illusion, and that I just had buried it so deep that I wasn't aware of actually how I was feeling. So here it is, 2 weeks before Christmas time, and Sunday, I don't think this is a coincidence either. Sunday, we had decided that we were going to take Christopher's Christmas tree to his grave. I really struggled with doing it this year. It was 50 degrees. We were putting the ornaments on the tree, and then we talked about this winter storm that was coming. And if we put the tree out, even because we live in South Dakota, we get a lot of wind, so we have to actually literally tack it into the ground, like put hooks and hold it in the ground because it's an artificial tree. that we might lose it during the winter storm. So we put it on hold until next weekend. And usually I have it up a lot sooner than this week, but this year has just been a little bit more difficult. And I'm not really sure what that's all about. So I thought I'd talk about some of the traditions that we have surrounding Christmas with our grief. Now, I talked about Thanksgiving a couple of episodes, which for me is much more of a struggle than Christmas. But maybe the answer is that I'm just so shut down during Christmas. And I've talked about it in various episodes, so if this is a repeat, I apologize about that. But had a traumatic childhood. Christmas was not a happy one at our house. But one of the traditions that my children really enjoyed and my husband really enjoyed was decorating the Christmas tree. And that first year, with Christopher being gone, it was really difficult to accept that he would not be here for Christmas. And I don't know about anyone else, but for me at the 6-month mark, my depression worsened, or my grief, whatever you want to call it, got much worse at 6 months. And with the people that I've worked with over the last 11 years, that first year, 6 months, they took a turn for the worse also. So the irony of this is that the DSM-4, for sure, I haven't looked at the DSM-5 at this criteria yet, but the conventional wisdom is that by the 6-month mark after the death of someone that you loved, you actually should be moving out of the mourning period. And that was just not true for me. It was not true for me back then. I don't think it's true for people now. It was just not true for me. So at this point, I was severely depressed. And I was facing my first Christmas without my son. And it was at that point that we decided to meet on Christmas Eve and decorate his grave. And Christopher always wore a Christmas hat. Always wore a Christmas hat to decorate the tree. In fact, I'll be posting a picture of him wearing that hat on Instagram. So I hung a Christmas hat. It was just a decoration on his grave and decorated it. And over the years, that's what we've done every year, is decorated his grave. And that first year, the whole family went. But the second year, no one wanted to go with. And I was really sad and disappointed because no one wanted to go with. And I don't remember who it was that said to me, you have to let people grieve in their own way, in their own timeline. And I realized just because everyone else didn't want to go to the grave every year for Christmas, and you can kind of understand why. It's a little depressing. They had kids. I mean, I get it, but I don't get it. And so every year since then, it's just been me and Roger going every year to decorate the Christmas tree. And the weird thing is, last year, I thought that we had lost the Christmas tree. And this summer, I was in the garage and I found the Christmas tree and couldn't understand how it got in the garage. And I know Roger didn't go pick it up without me. And so that's like the weirdest thing to me. is the fact that I have no memory of picking it up. You would think that I would have no memory of dropping it off, but that's not the case. I have no memory of picking it up. And in those first few years, I decorated his grave for every holiday. So Valentine's Day, I would go out and decorate his grave. St. Patrick's Day, so his daughter was born around Patrick's Day. I'm not going to say the exact date because I want to protect her a little bit. And so we would decorate for St. Patrick's Day, and we would decorate for Easter and his birthday, the day he died, the 4th of July. And I kept that tradition up for quite a few years. It's only been in the last 2 years, no longer than that, the last 3 or 4 years, that I've only decorated his grave for what I consider the important holidays, which are the Thanksgiving, the Christmas, his birthday, and his death day. And I think that's because internally I have moved to an inner sense of honoring Christopher and less of an external showing of that. And for me, it was just a natural progression of how I've learned to mourn. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about that today. Because I am a firm believer in the fact that when we lose our loved ones, we have to find a way to incorporate them into our daily lives. And for me, ritual and tradition was an important part of that. The other thing that we do is I was very involved in an alternative. I don't know how to explain it. I don't want to go into it too great of detail. But there's some traditions that I was exposed to by living here in South Dakota. One of them is leaving out a spirit plate with your loved one's favorite foods on them to honor them. And whatever animal came to eat that was your loved one's spirit. So I have kept up that tradition and I love it because it makes me feel at peace. And there's tradition for me in cooking those foods also. So when I'm cooking food for Thanksgiving or I'm cooking food for Christmas or his birthday, I always cook his favorite foods for his birthday. That's what we eat. Oh, I guess this last May I didn't cook it, but we went out and ate. And we had spaghetti and we had cheesecake because those were his favorite foods. And I took them to his grave so that he could partake of his favorite foods. And I think that's really important for the healing process for people, is for you to find your own ways to incorporate your loved one into your daily lives, into your holiday traditions, into, your religious traditions. It's making that person that has died a part of your life. Because the impact that they made on you, the love that they brought to you cannot be erased. It is always there and always present. We just have to find another way to express it. And that's what I have found at the Christmas time. But I'm kind of not understanding why I'm struggling so much to participate in the traditions that I know that will help me bring Christopher closer. I don't know if it's because I'm tired and I don't feel good. I got some other stuff going on in my life. I'm not exactly sure what my problem is with this year, but I know I'm having one. And part of my journey with this podcast is being honest about this grief journey, because community, even in the hard places, And right now I'm in a hard place. But if I only talk about the positives, I'm doing a disservice for all of you that are out there struggling and making it look like it's easy. And that was kind of my complaint when I first started on this grief journey, is that I found a lot of books about people that this is what I did to heal, this is what I did to heal. And I couldn't find anyone that was being real about the struggle. And I wanted to know if your struggle was the same as my struggle, and if there was something wrong with me because I struggled so hard. And whether those people intended to do that or not, that is the message that was sent back to me, is there was something wrong with me even in this struggle that I was having, that I somehow couldn't move on to healing. And I have found that there's other people that need to hear you struggle when you're grieving. Struggling is part of the process. It's part of this journey that we are on. Being honest and open about that is the key. Is the key to healing. Is the key to, I don't want to say surviving, but I don't even know what to call it. Maybe it's the key to learning to live with it. Because I know I couldn't have survived with accepting that Christopher was not accessible to me. Like in this far, so there's different cultures have different beliefs, right? So there's some people that believe that, the person goes to heaven. And so for me, the heaven was an abstract thought and they were not close to me. There's people that believe they go to the spirit world. Okay, so, the spirit world for different religions is not as close to me. For some religions, they're right next to you. For other types, there's different places, but they were not close and accessible. For me to be able to continue on this earth, I needed to believe that Christopher was right here and he was accessible and he was still here. And that's the only way that I have survived. For some people that have a deep faith, I guess you'd call it, like in Christianity or whatever, for them, there's deep connection to their loved one being in heaven and being with God, and that's comforting to them, and that's great and wonderful for them, but it wasn't wonderful for me. And so that's what I would encourage you, and why we're talking about this, especially at Christmas time, is this is the time to be selfish. This is the time that you have to focus on you, and you have to focus on what do you need in order to get through these next 2 weeks. What is imperative to you? Is it imperative to you to keep the old traditions and find a way to add your loved one to it? I've seen people make ornaments. I've seen people make pictures to put on the tree. Whatever you can imagine is the right thing to do. It's just got to be healing for you. It doesn't matter what other people's opinions of that is. And if someone comes into your house and they can't handle what you've done to honor that loved one at Christmas time, maybe they are not the people that you want to have in your house at Christmas time. There are other people that say, I can't do the old traditions anymore. I have to have something new. And so those type of people may decide to do something completely different. So at my house, we have a blend, right? My husband wanted to keep the old, so we have the old Christmas tree. He decorates it. He does all of those things. I needed something new, so we decorate the grave. We each participate in each other's symbolism of honoring the deceased loved ones that we have, but we both created different ways of coping with that. And so this Christmas, especially if it's your first Christmas, I would highly recommend that you experiment with what feels right for you. Now, it can be really hard. Let's talk about that for a second. It can be really hard to determine what's right for you because your heart hurts right now. Your heart hurts bad. And your head hurts because you have the memories, you have the traumas, and then you might have childhood traumas that get in the way. And so there's a lot going on in your head. So you have a lot going on in your head. Your heart hurts. I mean, and if you're like me, there's always the physical expression of this battle that goes on with inside of you. You know, your soul aches. So it can be really hard to determine what's right for you. Hang on, got a cough again. So how do you determine what's right for you is you listen to your gut. And for those of you that aren't used to doing this, what that takes to the best of your ability is to ask yourself the question, is this the right thing for me? And listen to what your belly says. Because that's where a sense of self is. That's where who we are lives. Our needs and our desires, they live right there. So if you follow Eastern medicine, that would be your, I think it's the third chakra. No, fourth chakra. It's either third or fourth chakra. I'm not sure. But anyways, it's yellow. It's the sense of self chakra. And you pay attention to right there, and that's your gut instinct. And if your gut instinct says this is right for me, then that's what you do. And you don't listen to the naysayers around you. You got to shut them out. And I hope this doesn't happen to the people around you. But it is possible that you're not going to be invited to certain places that you used to be invited to because you're too sad. And there'll be a mourning process with that also. There also will be a mourning process of the fact that you've lost your sense of who you are. And I have yet to find someone that hasn't said that the death of their loved one, even if it wasn't a child, has changed them significantly into a different person. And it may be that before the death of someone that you really loved Christmas and now you really hate Christmas. And just go through the flow with those changes. Because you never know, the love may come back. But it just may not be time this year. And if you're not invited to places that you used to be invited to, just tell yourself that that's okay too. That it's okay that you're not invited. I have learned that it's better to be not invited than to sit there and endure what's going on around you. Because it's really hard. It's really hard to sit there in large groups with people with their families and knowing their families are intact and yours is not. It's so upsetting. What's also upsetting too is sitting around with a group of people like at work and people are talking about their kids and they're talking about Christmas and it's hard not to get jealous. It's hard not to get jealous of the fact that they get to have their kids with them at Christmas time. And last week I did a podcast on the privilege of having children. It's like, no, you don't understand. You get to have your children come home for Christmas. You don't have to go visit them in a graveyard. That's a privilege. And I don't think people understand that. If you don't have to go visit your loved one in a graveyard, then you're living your best life. Doesn't matter if you don't have enough money. It doesn't matter if you don't have the best job or the best house. What matters is everyone's alive. And so this Christmas, I cannot emphasize enough that it is a time to take care of yourself. It's a time to be selfish. It's a time to focus on you and what you need. And what you need in relation to your grief. And don't let anybody else dictate what that is. No group, no expert, no guru. Like, I could give you a list of books that I read, but you're not me. I could give you a list of things that I did, but you're not me. Everybody has to find their own way on this path. But what I can talk to you about is, here was my struggle. Here's what I learned. I'll be with you along the way. I'll talk to you. I'll help support you in your struggle, and I'll help you find your way. But on this journey that's called grief, we are each just trying to find our way. And it's different for each and every one of us. We have things that are similar experiences. And I think this crosses cultures too. Because I believe that the shock of losing a child is the same for everyone. It's experienced differently, but the shock is the same. Like, the outward expression of that changes, or the internal expression of that changes. But the emotional, I believe that stays the same. That our bodies weren't meant to handle the stress of losing a child. We're not equipped for this. And it's not fair that we did. And you'll never convince me that it's fair. And you'll never convince me that God is an all-welcoming, all-loving being. Because if that was the case, then I would not have lost a child. You'll never convince me of that. I don't know what he is, but he's not all loving and he's not all kind. So I struggle at Christmas time. There's this outward pouring of beliefs that I don't necessarily believe in, that I struggle with because my son is dead. And, there's no such thing as take backs, right? We don't get to take him back. They say, what's your greatest wish? Well, my greatest wish is for Christopher to be back and still alive and living a life he deserves. I think we all have that wish in common. So no, I don't go visit Santa every year. Because he can't give me what I really want. And I really want Christopher to be alive. So I hope there's not too much rambling in today's session. I just wanted to share some of the struggles about Christmas, to encourage you to find your way during the next 2 weeks. Reach out to me on Instagram, Facebook. Leave me a message. Let me know if there's anything you want to hear. Tell me about what your traditions are. Take care. Kai and I and the Wonder Dog are Signing off for today.